Hi everyone, Amy here checking in midweek for week 10. It is my very last midweek update of the semester. I'm so sad. But I do have some important things that I want to go over, not the least of which is your week 9 quiz. Very important stuff here because it covers the nitty-gritty, kind of more in-depth rules of MLA, which will be useful to you as you work on your iSearch essay. Just a minute here while it lets me into the back side of things, the instructor side, so I can show you those statistics. A couple of these again are just things that are going to have to be memorized. So it was actually one of our higher scoring quizzes. You'll see here that the class average was a 90%. There's quite a standard deviation, so while most of you did very well, there were some outliers. But still, if the average is an A, I feel pretty good about that. So the lower scoring questions here, however, are the ones that I want to go over. And this first one is, like I said, just something you'll have to memorize. So the question is asking you, true or false, sources without a named author are not alphabetized like the other sources on the works cited. Instead, these get listed at the end after all these sources with authors. And so what's implied here is a very important rule of MLA, which is that if you do not have an author for a source, you leave that off and start with the title or subtitle, depending what information the source has. However, in this case, the question is false because those sources are then alphabetized by whatever the first word is of the citation itself, the title or subtitle usually, and those are alphabetized so that whenever that word or words is used to cite the source in text, it is easy for the reader then to flip back to the works cited, look down the left-hand side with those hanging indents, and find the source if they want to look it up further. So that whole system of, using the first word or words of the works cited entry as your attribution in your in-text citation, along with alphabetizing the sources on the works cited and using the hanging indents, is meant to make it easier and faster for a reader to see the source in text, find it on the works cited, and then look it up themselves. All right, just a couple more here that I want to go over. One of those is question 5. Another one that you just kind of have to memorize. Whenever you are citing a government document, you're going to treat the government agency as an organization as the author. So there's a term in MLA called organization as author, which is anytime something is published by an organization and you're treating that organization as the author. Well, the same thing applies to government agencies. So you would say, for example, that the author might be the CDC or the USDA or the FDA or something like that, because those are all government agencies. And then as just a rule here again that you have to memorize, you go by the highest level of the government agency that produced the document. So for example, if it was made in Boston but it was made by the United States government agency as opposed to the City of Boston agency, you would go with the United States. And so you're not going to use the author's last name because it's an organization. There is no last name. You never would use the date. And the title, this is probably the one that tripped you guys up the most. You might think, well, if it's an organization, then there's no author. We leave that off and start with the title. Normally that'd be true, but we do actually treat organizations as authors in MLA, as I said before. And then finally, question 6 here. This is something that I've talked about actually all semester long, so I was kind of surprised to see that this was one of the more frequently missed questions. It's the rule of big titles, little titles. Big titles go in italics, little titles or subtitles go in quotation marks and come first, usually. So for example, if it's a chapter of a book as opposed to the title of the book itself, or I've used the example before of a song on an album. The song title would go in quotes and come first, the album title would go in italics and come second. So this applies to all different media. It applies to the way you're introducing your sources for the summary and response essay as well as the iSearch essay. It applies to plays, it applies to artwork, it applies to everything. So it's saying what is wrong with this citation for a DVD movie. Gives you all the information here. It's got the title of the DVD, it's in quotes, who it was directed by, the performers, the producer, and the year. One option was that nothing is wrong. That's not the right one because I'm going to show you in a minute something is wrong. Two, or B, the film studio distributor should be in italics. That's actually not correct either, because we don't ever put publishers' names or anyone's name in italics. C, the title of the film should be in italics, not quotation marks. Well, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, is this a big title or a little title? Is it a title of a larger publication, or is it a title of an excerpt from that publication? I don't see any other titles here, like the excerpt title, for example. I also don't see a larger title in italics after the quoted title here. So that's going to tell me that something is amiss. You should always have something in italics. The book title, if you're using the entire book, the album title, if you're using the entire album, and so on. And since I have nothing in italics here, I'm going to know right away that something is wrong. So I'm going to assume then that since this is a DVD movie, that it's not an excerpt from the DVD movie, it's the entire movie. There's no excerpt title included that would set it off from the larger title here. So therefore, I'm going to conclude that this is a big title, that there's no little title being used, it's the whole DVD, but that would tell me that this should go in italics, not quotes. So I know that C is definitely correct. Since we have an E option here, I'm going to look at D as well. The actors Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson should not be included in the citation. That's actually not true either. It's really optional, so I don't want to go with D because in some cases you would want to include them. So just C is going to be the answer there. I'm noticing still some errors with MLA in your rough drafts of the iSearch essay, so I just want to make sure that you guys are on top of this, that you do email me if you have any questions about these rules, because I'd rather you ask and then ultimately do it right than not ask and then accidentally plagiarize. So that brings me right to your rough drafts of the iSearch essay. I'm very happy to have read these. Overall, I think participation in this week's workshop discussion was great. On the other hand, I felt like your rough drafts probably still need quite a bit of work. There were only a couple that I saw that I thought, well, this is in pretty good shape already. So most of you, sorry to say, actually have quite a bit of work to do. But I'm going to pull out some examples here just so that I can touch on each of your drafts. And I've kind of pulled out examples that represent what I think each of you needs to work on the most. So hopefully it'll be something helpful and constructive that you can actually take then to your revisions of your essays, and then you'll get more, of course, in-depth feedback from your workshop partners. So remember in your introduction for the iSearch essay that you basically need three things. You need some kind of a hook, like we've had all semester long in our intros, a quote, anecdote, question, something to draw your reader in, surprising statement, anything like that. Then you're going to provide the background knowledge of what led you to your research question, why you were interested in the topic, what background experience you had, what you already knew about it before you did research, everything from those notes that you did last week. And then you're going to have your actual research question. And so I did notice that quite a few of you are listing your research question as the title of your essay and not actually including it in that intro paragraph, and that's a problem. It does need to be in the actual text of your intro paragraph written out as a complete sentence. Usually it's going to be at the end of your intro paragraph. That's kind of the easiest place for your reader to find it, and it makes sense for the background knowledge that you provide in that paragraph to lead right up to it. I do want to show you this in Bethany's example here. Bethany, you have almost a really strong intro, or I should say you have an intro that's really almost there, but I will say that you're missing that actual statement of your research question, and then I think your intro kind of blends in with your first, what should be your first body paragraph in the essay. So you have a really compelling, surprising statement, bordering on an anecdote here to draw your reader in. You do have some background knowledge. I'd like to see this background knowledge made a little more personal to your actual experience. You know, you're using a lot of second person pronouns like you, and that makes it seem kind of hypothetical. I'd rather you be focusing just on your own personal experiences, saying things like, I felt this way, or I was interested in this, or I had this experience, or I saw my friends have this experience. And then you actually kind of transition at that point to talking about some of the findings from your research. And that's what tells me that maybe your intro paragraph and your first body paragraph are blurred together a little bit here. If you're going into any of your research findings, that's more appropriate for a body paragraph. So I would say probably somewhere right around here, you want to find a place where you can break off that intro and provide a topic sentence that sets up the main idea of the information you're talking about in the rest of that paragraph. So make that your first body paragraph. But even if you do that, you're still going to be missing a true statement of your research question here in the introduction. So I would suggest adding that even after you've broken up this intro and first body paragraph here. So then after your research question and your intro, you're all going to be moving into those body paragraphs that I've been alluding to already, which present your research findings. And remember, you're going to want to base those paragraphs off of main ideas from your research, not individual sources. So you shouldn't be introducing a source in a topic sentence because the focus of the paragraph is not the source. The focus of the paragraph is whatever main idea you saw coming up again and again in your research. And that's why it's important to get information from multiple sources into each body paragraph. So in your body paragraph topic sentences, then you are going to be introducing the main idea, whatever it is you're focusing on in each of those respective paragraphs. So really the person that I saw doing this most effectively at this point of the drafting stage, of course, was Leslie. Her work is always really strong and really ahead of the game because I think she puts in a lot of time, so thank you, Leslie. It's a really good example for your peers. So I'll just show you what I mean here in her example. You can also see it in the sample iSearch essay that's included under content as well. Forgive my work that I have going on here in the background. It won't minimize for me. But as soon as this loads, I will show you what I'm talking about in Leslie's draft. Okay, sorry about that. So Leslie also has a really strong intro, and you can see it culminates here on her direct statement of her research question. Then her topic sentences, again, introduce main ideas, not sources. So not only that, but she has transition words to help guide the reader through in a sequential pace as well. Set off with a comma, that's perfect right there. So the main idea of this first paragraph is that colleges and universities should offer students courses about how to foster team spirit and leadership, or leadership in the workplace. This is a very specific point. It's about team spirit and or leadership. I assume you're grouping those things together, Leslie. You had asked about if any of these paragraphs need to be broken in two. And if you're finding information about team spirit separately from leadership, that might be an opportunity to break this paragraph up. But the way I'm reading this and the rest of the paragraph seems like it's grouping those things together, and that's fine if that's what you found in your research. So then from there, she's got the rest of the sentences in the paragraph kind of expanding on this one overall main idea, and you can see that there's information from just one source here, but it would be easy to see how she could add in further information on this theme from other sources. Next, again, we have a transition word here for sequence. Then she says colleges and universities should offer students courses about basic life skills in the workplace. So this is obviously a different point than the one we saw a minute ago about team spirit and leadership. So from there, we do get a little bit more information, but again, just from one source. So Leslie, you'd want to go back in and make sure you develop these paragraphs a little bit more with information from multiple sources. And then third, okay, really easy to follow along. You're doing all these nice things for your reader there. Colleges and universities should teach students how to behave appropriately in social occasions. So again, this is a totally distinct point from basic life skills and team spirit and leadership. So now taking on the social kind of interpersonal aspect of this. And then this is the one that I believe she does have information from multiple sources, I think. Oh, no, just one here. So Leslie, you're going to want to go back and make sure not only that you have 3 sources altogether, but that you're pulling in information from multiple sources there. And then the conclusion. So really strong paragraphs there. I want to pull that up against contrast that I saw in Kindle's, not to say Kindle that you're not on the right track, because Kindle, you have so much good information, but yours is one that would benefit from tightening up the organization just a little bit, because you have some paragraphs on the other hand that are focused on source information or just individual sources like this one. This is lacking a topic sentence altogether, so you would want a sentence here before you present the quote that says, you know, what the main idea is that you found in your research in your own words, and then develop it with these quotes and paraphrase from your sources. And then also remember, quotes by themselves are not complete sentences when you lift them into your own writing. You need to add some kind of framing statement, an attributive tag, or a lead-in or something to make it part of a sentence of your own. This is another one that's a little different. So I can see where maybe you're presenting a main idea here, but I can see that it also comes from a source. Good job bringing in multiple sources, but if you're looking at these two sources, what are they both talking about? What is the common thread that ties them together? And that's what you should be presenting in your topic sentence and wrapping up at the end of the paragraph as well. This is one, again, that potentially could be similar to a topic sentence, but I get the sense that this may come from a source. It's just not cited. So try to look across your sources and in your own words see or present what you see as a common theme, and then you can give us these specific examples from the sources themselves. However, we then have some shorter paragraphs. Again, this is where I'm saying it needs to be tightened up. You probably don't need so many paragraphs, and some of these are kind of shorter and undeveloped, so I wonder if maybe some of the information here might be a little bit more appropriate if combined into this for a more solid and complete paragraph as opposed to two incomplete ones and that kind of thing. So I would say, you know, in general, you want to look at all the paragraphs you have here, create little sections. Don't be afraid of paragraphs that maybe go on for the majority of a page. It's okay to have longer paragraphs, but you do need topic sentences to help the reader focus on what you're going to be talking about in each of those paragraphs, especially if they're so complex. So if you have further questions about how to do that, just let me know in an email or something along those lines. I can touch base with you that way. I also want to mention that for your source info, it should all be coming from those 3 required sources or other sources like those. So you'll have one general Google source, one advanced Google source, and one database source. And if you want to bring in other additional sources, that's fine, but they should all be from one of those areas. I did see a few of you, like Gray and Jessica, who were pulling in information from your personal life and your personal experience. And this is all research-based for this assignment, so your personal experience isn't going to be appropriate for the academic audience that you're writing for. It's not that I don't think it's valid, because I do think it's important as a entry point to your topic. You can talk about it in your background section in your introduction, for example, but when you're presenting the actual answers to your research question, you want that to all come from credible sources, and your experience might not be typical of what most people go through, or your experience might be colored by your emotions. I'm not saying that's what's happening in these drafts, but these are just reasons why typically academic audiences don't accept personal experiences from writers. So I just want to point out Gray's doing that here. You know, sometimes we do it without even realizing. And especially when we're so interested in a topic, it's common to feel like you want to put all that stuff in there. So, you know, he says, when I was in 6th grade, my family had just moved to Aurora, etc., etc. Please do not copy and paste. I'll talk about your citations in just a minute, but this is a big no-no. You've got some really good source information in here, Gray, so I would say just rely on that instead. Don't bring yourself into it, because that kind of blurs the lines between you as a writer and your presentation of your research. Okay, so I did mention that I'm going to talk just a little bit about the citations. You guys are kind of at various levels of executing those. Most of you are doing a pretty good job, but some of you are still doing a lot of like again, copy and paste of quotes, long quotes that should be paraphrased instead. I do want to remind you all that your in-text citations, whether they are attributive tags or parenthetical citations, those all need to come before the period at the end of the sentence that you're citing. So, you know, if you put it after the period, then your reader's going to interpret that as being part of the next sentence. So it needs to come before what we call the terminal period at the end of the sentence. So Jonathan was one. Jonathan, you have a lot of awesome citations. They're all really good, thorough, they're everywhere. You have page numbers, that's awesome. But all of these periods need to come at the ends of the sentences you're citing so that your reader knows that this page 4 is actually referring to the quote that came before it. So that would apply to every single one of these that you're going to see here. So we would just do this period after the 4, that's okay. Everything is still going to come outside of the quotation marks. Same goes here. And of course, you do need to include those page numbers and parenthetical citations for paraphrase as well as quotes. So just make sure, you know, again, even when it is an attributive tag instead of the name in the parentheses and that kind of thing, that the period comes after. And then do make sure that when you do parentheticals that they all come at the end of the sentence, not in the middle of the sentence, because I did notice that some of you were starting to put those in the middle of the sentence, right next to the part that you're quoting or paraphrasing. And while that may seem more logical, and I don't necessarily disagree with it personally, that is not the convention, I guess is all I can say. And then I also want to remind you all, please do not forget your works cited page. I'm going to show you one here just as a reminder so you all are prepared that you're going to have to do this. Don't leave it for the last second. Something like this is not going to fly, just so you know, not to pick on you, Jessica, because you have a lot of really good information in here. Too, but just putting the links, even this first one is not complete, you need to actually be following the works cited rules. You have all that materials from week 9, even going back to week 6. All the information is on the internet. You can just search Purdue OWL, MLA, works cited, and it will show you how to cite all of these websites. And if you used a database, you need to provide that citation information as well. All right, so don't forget that you do need to do your comments to your workshop partner by midnight on Friday, and then also remember that that includes 2 different components. You have to download their paper, mark it up using the comment feature in Microsoft Word, and you have to use the workshop worksheet that can be found under week 10 content here. Download that, type on it, and upload it back along with your marked up version of their draft to the discussion, as I said, by midnight on Friday. And then your reflections at the end of the week for the discussion. Remember, you have to do those to get a passing grade. I want you to focus on what you're going to be working on for your revision of the essay, which is actually due Monday. So this is my next point here, very important. Your final essay, the iSearch, is due Monday, August 7th, because that is the last day of the semester. Unfortunately, even though I usually have essays not due until Friday of the week following workshop, we just didn't have time to take 4 extra days at the end of the semester, being such a short semester anyway. So unfortunately, you're only going to have 1 day after that discussion wraps up to submit your iSearch. So it's very important that you have a lot of that revision work done up front. Go ahead and start working on your revisions now based on the feedback I've already given you in this video. You should also be getting the feedback from your workshop partner by Friday, so you should be able to get started on that at least right away over the weekend, even before you get your reflections done at the end of the week. Or you can do those anytime after Friday night, so you could go ahead and do those as well. I just want to show a couple of things on the assignment sheet here which you can check out and should check out before you actually submit. Don't forget those really important things that I already mentioned when I was going over the discussion. You do need to have your research question stated in a complete sentence somewhere in the introduction, usually toward the end of the introduction. Even if it's the title of your essay, you have to say it in a complete sentence there. Make sure you have topic sentences for each of the body paragraphs, and that each body body paragraphs focuses just on one main idea. Make sure that you have more than one source represented in each body paragraph. Make sure that you're doing both the in-text and works cited citations, and that whatever the first word of each citation on the works cited is the word that you're using to refer to that source in text, so that those match up and it's easy for the reader to find the sources, and that you answer your research question in the conclusion as well as recap those main ideas from the body paragraph. That's what we call a delayed thesis strategy. So instead of presenting your thesis up front, you ask the question up front, move through the information, and then answer it at the end with that delayed thesis. And then I do want to just mention the rubric here. Please refer to this before you submit, making sure that you go back and make any final last minute changes that need to be made. For example, are you identifying main points for your body paragraphs? Are you struggling to do that? Are you failing to do that? That would put you in different places on this scale. Are you bringing in information from more than one source in each body paragraph? Do you have 3 different types of sources, and where do you fall, more or less in that category here? Does each paragraph focus on just one main point? Do you answer the question in the conclusion using the delayed thesis strategy? Are you struggling with that or failing to do that or not even attempting to do that down here in the D range? And then of course the MLA stuff is extremely important. If you forget your works cited, you're going to be down here in the plagiarism category, which does not allow you to pass. So in order to pass this essay, you have to include your works cited. Do not forget that. And if you have any questions about anything before you submit it, I'm always happy to answer those as well. Okay. Just a couple of more things to wrap up the semester, I promise. So, we also have a discussion going on right now over in Coach's Corner about advice for future students, and Deb's going to be kind of reflecting back with that, so will I, about the advice that we have for your future based on what we've seen so far this semester. And usually the things that you're telling other students to do are things that it's a good idea for all of you to do as well. And as I have said in previous weeks, I will take any post, a new thread or a reply, as long as it's in depth and goes over the same information that you would include regardless, in order to get your points for this one. So save some time at the end of the week for it so that you can have that reflection and be able to process what you've done, your successes and your failures, and apply those in a future semester to help continue your success throughout your college journey here. So please don't forget that this is going on. I do also want to refer back to Jonathan's week 9 discussion reflection, because a lot of times we don't come back to those reflections once I've read them, but his was really important, and I thought something that all of us can take to heart. He says, I'm confident that these exercises have been very helpful. The obvious next step is to put it all together. I just finished a research paper for another class, and I'm very grateful for all the methods I've learned here. I feel like I was able to put together a good paper and one to be proud of. As I head into this final week, I know that I definitely needed this class and the tools that I have learned. I will be implementing every one of them throughout my college journey. And that was so wonderful for me to hear, because the whole point of this class is to prepare you for other classes, right? It's to prepare you for the writing that you're going to do when you get to English 121 and all of your other college classes. And so I really do hope that you see that these skills are transferable, that they are things that you can apply to every class, not just an English class. And so going back now to our advice for future students, or even each other, or even yourselves, we just have one thread, but already it's a good conversation going on, and there's been a lot of important points raised. Megan says here, take time to shut everything out and focus, and then going down further, she says, I really she's really emphasizing the fact that you have to plan for outside factors beyond the normal stresses of everyday life. And so I think that's really important. I see a lot of students doing that, where they say, well, I can handle this if nothing bad happens. Like I'm barely keeping my head above the water and I can take on one more thing, but if I take on two more things, I'm going to sink. And so Deb kind of brought that up again here. And she says, I love that when you write, be prepared to be tested from outside factors. And by outside factors, I mean outside the normal stresses of just everyday life. So true. How do you drown out those outside factors? Being able to do this falls under exactly what you're suggesting here. I applaud you for coming through without those outside factors bringing you down. So, you know, I love that. Like, don't stretch yourself so thin that if one little thing happens, you're going to sink. Be practical. You know, I looked at all your fall schedules, and I think for the most part they're very doable. But if you're taking, you know, 5 classes, be prepared that that's going to be quite a commitment time-wise, and that you're going to have to find a way to shut out everything else, even if there are big things that come up in your life. So I know I meant for this to be encouraging, and now I feel like I'm saying, you know, be prepared, but you should be prepared. So I think you all have done really well this semester, and you're all going to be very prepared to go on to English 121. So let me go over the last few things that you need to take care of here before we wrap up our semester. Of course, you have your regular week 10 assignments. You have a journal this week. You have your workshop discussion that I've talked about already. You have a grammar quiz over some spelling and confusing words. That tend to get mixed up. So I often find that spelling and confusing words quiz is one of the most useful for people. Then for student success, you do have to turn in an annotation for your database source, your third source annotation. We have that advice for next group of students discussion that I already mentioned. And then there's 2 worksheets here that Deb would like you to turn in for assessment purposes, just so we can see how the program is working and how she was able to support you all. You get points just for doing those. So if you are one of those people that needs every single point, make sure you just get it done and turn it in. It's not hard work. 10 points just for trying. And then of course, don't forget that your formal essay 3, the iSearch, is due Monday at midnight, because that is the end of the semester. And if it's not in the Dropbox by then, I won't be able to take it into account for your final grades. Those grades are due very quickly after the semester ends, and so I have to get things graded and turned in right away. All right, well, it's been wonderful having all of you. I will check in again next week briefly, but you're not going to have any work for me to go over, so it'll be a little bit different. But I'm really excited to read the final drafts of your iSearch essays, and I just so appreciate all the hard work each one of you has put in. Hang in there. We are so close to the end, and it's going to be a great weekend. All right, thank you, everyone.